Oh, no. Okay.
It's gonna be one of those nights.
Have you been drinking?
5, 4, 3,
3,
2,
1.
Well, I really want to thank everybody and appreciate. I in advance want to appreciate you putting up whatever this happens to sound like from your end. This is the 22nd episode of the Mosby Learning Podcast. My name's Dan Hirt. I'm calling in from Mississauga, Ontario.
And my name is Adam Costakes. I'm calling in from Dallas, Texas.
And I'm Cynthia Gibbs from Sleetville, Texas.
Sweetville?
Sleet-filled.
You made that up.
Sleet-filled.
Sleet-filled?
Yeah, we have sleet.
Okay.
In the town I live in.
It does sound cold there. It's cold up here as well. It's
How does
cold
it
everywhere,
sound
I guess.
cold?
Well, just based on the complaints I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming back after episode 21 there. 21, that was, for those of you that heard of it, it was an interesting episode where me and Adam, we talked about some stuff, and then we texted about that stuff for 2 days, and then we researched, and then we argued, and then we had a great time, and then we're back to do it all over again. But of course, we brought a friend, and while we may have discussed pay wage gaps in the last episode, I assure you, all three of us are making the exact same dollars from this episode.
And after last episode, our sponsors are gone. So there we go.
Yeah, the three that were left.
Yes.
So what this basically says is Eli and I can never let you two do podcasts alone anymore.
That could be. Well, you know, I mean, we get along well, but we're not the same person. But that's what's important about this. That's what's important. And you know what? So here's, quite honestly, to both you guys and everybody else out there that's listening, that's one of the reasons why I have the people that I have on this podcast, because they're not me. You guys aren't me. I'm not you. Isn't that the case, though? But we're different people, and that's a good thing. We want to hear those different ideas, those different concepts. One thing that I do want to talk about before actually two things, three maybe, I don't know. Show notes for this episode, you're going to find those at mosby.ca/022. If you wanted to send us an email, Adam, well, have you gotten email? Adam?
I have not. And I check it on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like one of those, it's like a presidential alert when it comes in on your phone. You know, it's like at 3 a.m. It's just going to be super, super loud. But mosbylearning@gmail.com is where you can send us a complaint, a compliment, or some sort of question, I guess, if you wanted to. Now, Gibbs, you weren't here last week, but I did want to let you know that we are going to have an additional 4-episode ban on discussing HSC.
What? I had stuff ready.
No, not allowed to be brought up on the podcast. And in fact, I'm going to bleep my reference to HSP just a few seconds ago. I'll have to bleep that one too, because it's too much. It's out of control. Can't help it. It's absolutely rampant. You better help it, or otherwise, again, my reference to HSP just a few seconds ago. I'll have to bleep that one too, because it's too much. It's out of control. Can't help it. It's absolutely rampant. You better help it, or otherwise it's getting bleeped. So just a quick heads up there. Now, I don't really have any social media updates. Did Adam, anything you wanted to touch on?
No.
No. Okay. So there was just a real quick thing that we did see, and I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention anything. There was a few episodes ago where we were talking about the ATD capability model, and there was something that a couple of us saw tonight about the value of credentialing, either pro or con. What are the odds? And I'm not saying there's no value to credentials, but let me tell you, I think there's too much weight put on them, and there was some huffing and puffing being done about that on LinkedIn earlier today, and I think reasonably
like
so. Some
PhDs, or
specifically, it was an. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
PPL 7. I don't know, but see, that's the thing. I don't take credentials overly serious. I mean, I feel there's value in them for sure, but the thing is, it shouldn't necessarily be a gate that you didn't have to know the secret handshake. Who cares? I think with a lot of this stuff. Anyhow, that's it. Later on in the episode, well, hopefully we're going to talk about a couple of cool headlines. One about roses and how they smell. One about microlearning is going to come up. Speaking of TD, we're going to have an article from them about microlearning, and maybe we'll just poke fun. Who knows? And we're also going to talk about how this headline, man. I tell you what, I did some digging. It's funny. What was that, Adam? Did you have something you wanted to jump in on?
I did not, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Just want to check. Training new employees sucks. 3 ways to make it faster, easier, and more effective. I'm going to tell you why I take big issue with that headline when we get there, because it doesn't make any damn sense. I shouldn't say that. Specifically, one thing in there doesn't make any sense. There is an article that I saw on Florida Man the other day, and I have not been able to successfully open that article today at all.
Me either. I don't know what's going on.
Thing. All right. Well, anyways, I have the gist of it, because that's really all you need from Florida Man. And we'll touch on that. Also, we're going to look at, what are we going to talk about at the end here, towards the end? We're going to talk about training intake. And how do we formalize this sort of thing? What do we talk about? What questions are we asking? Is it appropriate to push back? All those sort of things. We'll talk about that later. And I do have an envelope. I haven't even opened it. I have an envelope from Portland, so we'll see what that is. I haven't really been looking forward to hearing from them, given the content of last week's episode, but we'll see what they had to say. All right. So let's jump in the content of last week's episode, but we'll see what they had to say. All right. So let's jump into this first one here. Smell of roses, even during sleep, shows to help improve learning success by as much as 30%. Now, did you guys have a chance to peek at this one?
Crock.
Crock? What does that
crock.
mean? Are you churning butter?
It's a bunch of crock.
It's a bunch of crock. Why do you say that? With such conviction, too.
Because, personally, I'm sitting here thinking, I want to know each of these students. How smart were these students already? And really, what was this vocabulary test words?
What were the words? So, complexity. So, let's do a quick breakdown of the actual thing. This comes from the, this is by...
Although, I will say, in a company that will not, I learned that the color
this isn't allowed
of
either, Gibbs.
the rugs...
You can't do this.
Mentally helps people emotionally like to be at work.
Wait,
what color was the rug? Taupe?
No, I was going to say, I didn't hear that. The color of the rugs?
Yeah,
I don't even know who you're talking about right now, so that's fine.
So, so I was reading this article, and they're like, oh, the smells you have mentally made these kids smarter, whatever. Yeah. But then we were building a site, right? And they chose these multicolored tiles of rug that they laid down in our cafeteria. It was all these crazy colors, the rainbow, and not just a rainbow, but all these colors mixed together. And when they were putting them down, we said, why did they choose this color? And they said, because science has showed that these colors and then the placement of they are their lunches and get back to work.
Oh, that's like the seats at McDonald's, or at least how they used to be.
Yeah, and so maybe it made me think of that when I was reading this article.
Interesting.
What is it doing mentally or emotionally to people that, I don't know, maybe it's helping them focus or getting better sleep?
Right? So, different colors, you do definitely, I hate walking into Target. So it's red everywhere. It's just very...
What?
It's red. The red is just in your face. It's all over the place. I get
you got
offended.
stopped and asked if you were an employee at Target, huh? Because you walked in with a red shirt.
I did not. It's just too red. It's very, from a color perspective, it's one of the worst colors. When you walk into Target, next time you go in there...
They have a lot of white there, too, don't they?
Yeah, but
it's
next time you go in there,
there's
red. It's bright red every single where you go. Everywhere
but
you
they got the cute dog and everything. I don't know. It seems to work.
I don't shop at Target. You're from Gilligan Islands. He feels pretty good.
Well, okay.
But if you're Gillian Anderson...
Gillian Anderson, really, who we're all thinking of, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Obviously.
And I will say, and I'm going to change the subject here on smell. I don't know if the smell
I'm not comfortable with that segue, to be honest.
You know, I don't know if smell will help. I know smell could make it worse, right? Like there was somebody.
Yeah. So my other question is, how bad does that classroom smell?
Okay, so what we'll do, let's just briefly overview the article, for God's sakes, and then we'll kvetch here. So this comes from the Good News Network. I have no idea who they are, but of course, show notes will include the links, and those will be found at mosby.ca/022. And here's kind of the high level here. It was a German study, if you can imagine that.
And her name is Newman.
Was it?
Her name is Newman.
The researcher's name was Newman. That's right. Yeah.
Like Seinfeld.
Just like Seinfeld. According to an extensive new laboratory sleep study, German researchers found that smells have a very supportive effect on learning success when presented both during learning and sleep. Now, I don't know why they felt that. They're like, you know what, it's good enough that we do it while the kids are learning, but we should really have this smell by them while they're sleeping too. Maybe there's something that's got to do with like the brain decompressing, and this would probably be good to have somebody smarter than us on here to talk about this, but we're all you got, folks. But the idea that maybe the brain's got to relax and compress and process the information from the day, maybe there's something to that. I don't know, but it was interesting because there's a couple things in here. It says, here's another article or another piece that I pulled out of there. This can be achieved very easily outside the lab. And I have actually considered doing something like this in a training, like maybe like a week-long training session. So if we're doing system training, what happens if we what happens if we brought in cookies? We lit a candle, or
bring in a cookies. People are going to be happy.
So and that's a nice thing to tie things with to good associations too. But there's always those smells that you hear the anecdote a lot of. It smelled like home or cooking,
Cinnabon.
Those sort of things.
It's like going to the mall and you smell like Cinnabon.
There you go. But so that's the same thing, though.
Disneyland down Main Street.
Boy.
Do you know this, Adam? That
probably.
they send out smells.
They do.
As you're walking to Main Street of like cotton candy and stuff.
They do. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so and not just cotton candy, but I mean other places. Because I was thinking as I read this, a hotel that I stayed in, this was 8-9 years ago in Vegas. I think it was called Videra, which I thought was a strange name because there was a V and then there was a D in the first two letters of the name.
And considering I've never heard of that hotel, you were way off strip.
No, well, it was like like
say,
1 block away. It was behind the Bellagio or something.
In the corner.
It wasn't in the desert by a gun range. I'm just saying. Down
the alley,
okay.
You entered through the kitchen.
Right. I feel like you're detracting from the story now. But there was a very distinct smell in the hotel. So obviously there was something in the they had like a custom smell for the hotel. I've heard of this before.
I've heard of that because I remember actually a guy's trip for Vegas. We went into a dive hotel that's no longer there, and I believe it was the Tropicana, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the one that was raised. Buddy looks over at me and kind of the group, he goes, "That gentleman is the smell of despair." And it was, dumpy, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the one that was raised. Buddy looks over at me and kind of the group, he goes, "That gentleman is the smell of despair." And it was, dumpy, the dumpy hotel, the old one, that's the smell of despair. And then you walk in the Bellagio, who has beautiful flowers and everything, and just smells nice. It's a casino, and it still smols nice when people are smoking cigars. It smells fantastic. But I don't know.
That's why I was going back to, why did this schoolroom smell really bad?
Well,
and so it was distracting
really
the kids from working. But now that they have a nice smell, they can now focus.
What they did was they put these scent sticks near the students, maybe directly on the students, I don't know, but at least near the students while they were studying in school. While they were studying at home, they put them like by their
Did it help
desk.
them with their stuttering too?
It might. I don't know. There's going to be another German study on like the bedside table for like while the kids were sleeping. But it's a super small sample group. Super freaking small, right? There's 54 kids in this. So who cares almost? That is not a big enough sample size for it to really be, everybody's confident with this.
Studies show that the more sleep you get, the better physically your body is and mentally. So maybe the scent helped them sleep better, which in turn helped them to learn better.
I think as a general policy going forward now, and Adam, you may agree with this, anytime we're talking about studies, we need to have references and specific, because let me tell you.
You're going to spend the next week having to track that one down.
We learned some lessons, I think.
My CG trainer told me that. There's my reference.
Tell them to CG ladies and gentlemen, CG stands for Camp Gladiator. It's
or Cynthia.
Like your Cynthia Gibbs trainer helped you with that. So it showed this article. It says that the students showed a significant increase in learning success by about 30%, which is pretty good. Right? 30%, that's significant enough to say, should we bring in cookies while we're training people? And then when they do an assessment, should we give them cookies? And then when they're on the job, should we also be giving them cookies to remind them of the things they need to be reminded of?
So that's about 18 kids.
18 kids?
18 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 26 and 26.
Well, I just did it in my head.
27, 27.
About 18
27,
kids.
27. What do you mean 18 kids?
Well, 30% of 54 kids is about 33% is about
increase
18.
in learning success. So they had a list of vocabulary words. So I would say if they had 100 words, maybe some kids remembered
learning
Yeah. So
okay.
I know you read the articles. I appreciate that. Maybe
I did. I did read it.
Get into the details next time.
I did read it.
I know. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to throw in on that one? Is this something you'd be willing to try as an experiment? If it were, so let me ask you this: if the investment in this was less than $5, would you invest in doing it for the next session? Like where it was, you had the sort of setup where you able to do that?
Well, and a lot of people bring those, those oil thingies.
I hate them.
Yeah, they smell really bad, especially in smaller areas. But that's
I think it depends on the kind of oil you put in them.
I mean, that's supposed to really help people too, I heard.
I think it's more a placebo effect. But I think the one thing that you run into is then all of a sudden it's like that person who puts on too much cologne or the
too, I heard.
I think it's more a placebo effect, but I think the one thing that you run into is then all of a sudden it's like that person who puts on too much cologne or the person that brings in an air freshener that just drives you nuts because it smells.
Oh my gosh, like the other day. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Adam.
There was one in a recent story that we had that there was one in there and it was just too much. It just over over pollinated, I guess is the right word, right? So it was just too...
Wait, pollinated?
I don't know. What's the right word for that?
Well, and there's just...
too much.
And there's
diffused?
just some
too much?
Smells that are just too strong.
Was there wafting involved?
Well, I find out like the ones with vanilla are really strong.
Vanilla. Mm-hmm. I like vanilla. I was hoping this would be a vanilla podcast.
No, it's not going to be vanilla. So I think let's see what happens.
We do have cookies every day in my one class.
It could be a scented candle. It could be a harmless scented candle that smells like a hotel in Vegas.
Yeah, it could.
Just think about it.
Maybe.
Chew it over. All right. 2 more articles here, and then we'll touch on a couple other things. So let's do, let me ask you, preferences. Cynthia, what are we doing next?
I like to go in line. Because that's how I open.
Yes, you do. All right. So who was next? That was keeping up with the evolving regulations, compliance training.
Yeah.
And Mike, you said in line. I'm just following.
I know. I was just saying because this article, man.
Oh, because it's about microlearning, but that's okay. We're not gonna beat this dead horse too badly. So this is from td.org. I think it was right. And this I found by guys, I'm starting to notice a trend with articles that are about learning material, that there's not a lot of journalism per se. There's not a ton of altruism. People just writing articles. They're usually sponsored by somebody, and this one happens to be sponsored by Alan Com. Which is, I think, a division of Allen Interactive, maybe, or I don't know who they are, but or maybe they're not, but they're Allen Com, and that's who is responsible for this bit of content. And the gist of this one is, compliance training's tricky. Is there a solution to satisfy the needs of, dare I say, a modern learner? Which I already regret saying. I might even bleep that out. So the question that they kind of asked towards the end of the intro is, so how can compliance training become more relevant and applicable while adhering to regulations as they continue to change?
Why are you continuing to try to be German?
That wasn't German. That was just newsreader voice. Yeah.
Oh.
Reader voice. Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, come on, that's not German. Give me your German, your German accent.
I don't do any of those.
That's right, you don't. All right. So the point is that people seem to take to microlearning well, and that we want to try to use that. But the question is it actually a good match for the content? And one of the issues that they bring up here is that I'm not going to use any voices here. A potential pitfall is that smaller chunks of content could lead to a lack of coherent messaging. So lessons may feel disconnected, which I thought was interesting. Do you guys have any concerns around disconnected messaging when it comes to the microlearning content that you have created?
I think it depends on the industry.
Why?
Well, I mean, if you're...
Right.
Well, I mean, if you're in... Okay, I don't know. The education industry, right? Or you're in medical industry or anything. It's got the compliance training is going to look different. And there's parts, I think, when you look at us in the industry we're in the financial industry, there's so many laws and stuff. It's like some of it's really hard to make into shorter things, although it's always too much. But because of the regulations and stuff, there's stuff you have to go through no matter what. Now, if it's like a company compliance thing, I guess you could say, like sexual harassment, or like how to use social media appropriately, or like things like that, like workplace environment kind of stuff. Sure, I think micro learning would be great. But for like laws and stuff, it's rough, I think.
Adam, what are your thoughts here?
I tend to disagree. I actually think it's probably a good use of getting the point across to the specific nugget that you want to learn. Because at the end of the day, most compliance training, and it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, most of that mandatory training, that's long form, long training, people gloss over most of it, and then they just do enough to pass the test. But when I see 13 microlearning trainings compared to one, that overwhelms me more than just the one long one. I think you'll get more. I think you'll get more. The learner's going to learn more by going through those 13. Learn what's most important, and if it's designed correctly, that's most important. The key. Well, that's the key, right? So if it's designed.
We're just talking about chunking. It sounds like you're just talking about chunking, Adam. And what would be the difference? I mean, really, what is the difference?
I'm not saying put it all in. I'm saying you got to summarize. Like, if you take a law, most compliance courses is just to answer a specific question on the law. It's not to understand everything about the law. And I think you can just get the specifics. I don't think you need to go into the depth that most compliance needs to go through, besides checking the box, and then they'll pass the test anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I absolutely agree that most compliance training is too in-depth, and the problem is I think sometimes we rely on, well, it's because everybody's freaked out about getting sued. So how do we create a situation where nobody's freaked out about getting sued? I guess you have to get rid of frivolous laws. How do you pick which ones are frivolous and which ones are legitimate, and where do people actually take advantage of whether it's a borrower or a customer or a client or anything like that? And it's hard. I think that's one of those things where if we all just decided to chill out a little bit, that would be the same thing by saying, well, can compliance training just be easier? So I honestly don't know if we're ever going to get there by having less content. I think if there's some way we can make the content more accessible, and because, a textbook, let's take a textbook, for example. It's very nutrition dense. Like there's not a lot of excitement. There's probably not a lot of filler, not a lot of fun in there. Maybe there is, I don't know, but I have my doubts. I've read enough of them. So anything that's a step away from a textbook that would cover the same material kind of has to be stretched out a little bit to maybe add some connectors between different ideas or to add a story to it. Or we're probably going to have to keep the same amount of compliance material. And then if we want to make it better at all, we have to stretch it out, which doesn't sound fun to me. I mean, I'd rather make it fun, but to do that, I have to stretch it out. And now I have to justify to an organization, should we spend 45 minutes training somebody on what's really a half an hour's worth of content that they're still never going to use in 2 years?
Right.
It's a very hard sell.
It's what's the actual purpose? Is the purpose to check the box to say you got compliance training, or is it to teach somebody what's actually relevant? Right? Because I think it's to throw the employee under the bus when they still up and they screw something up terribly. Right. But I think that's what it is. Oh, we trained them. No, they got training. Sure. They got world-class training. So I think the bigger argument though is do you make compliance training better training in general, right? Because most of the compliance training is a PowerPoint slapped to make. Do you make compliance training better training in general, right? Because most of the compliance training is a PowerPoint slapped into into a Captivate file or Articulate file. Yeah. That PowerPoint in your interaction is click next to continue. Yeah. I mean, that's horrible design training, or some of the ones that we're doing have a Jeopardy game with no context to it. You still need to hit 80%. It's designed poorly. So if you're saying it may not be microlearning, might not be the answer, but better designed compliance training probably is the answer if you actually want people to learn. But I think most companies and most areas are just checking the box from a legal perspective. We did it. They were trained. Yeah. And we have the proof that they were trained because they got 80% on a test.
Where I struggle is a lot of the compliance training, because we support groups that have to do it, we're having to do it.
Mm-hmm. So, just to jump back to the article here for a second, there was a name that came to mind when one of the things that came in here, and it was a woman that I saw speak at the ICE conference. So I went to a conference in last May. It was the ICE conference.
Was that the one you spoke at? Was it that one?
I spoke at the ICE conference in May.
Yeah, about microlearning. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Well, so did this young lady, Shannon Tipton, and she was pretty fired up about a lot of stuff. I think I've got her name right, and apologies if I didn't. But one of the things, and so the potential pitfall, blah, 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 I think I already read this, but the potential pitfall is that smaller chunks of content could lead to a lack of coherent messaging, so the lessons may feel disconnected. Now, she had specifically said in her session, which I mean, she's been at the game longer than I have, so I defer to her, but she had said that microlearning is not microlearning if it's part of a process. She had said that microlearning is not microlearning if it's part of a process and you learn that part of the process and then you go to the next part of the process. That's not microlearning, she had said. And I thought, well, I don't know. So let's say I have a process with 8 steps and I know 4 of them, and then I watch a small video or I get a job aid on step 5, and then I find my way through 6, 7, and 8. Well, to me, that's microlearning. But if I've got content that's available for steps 1 through 8, so what? So the continuation of the material I don't know if that takes it out of, and I think, if I've got it right, I think what she says is, no, that doesn't count as microlearning because it's maybe just a small chunk of a larger piece of content, that the actual content itself should only be like you have the whole top to bottom story in like less than blank minutes.
Right. And, but is she getting more at it's microlearning is just not chunking and just cutting minutes? Right. And, but is she getting more at it's microlearning is just not chunking and just cutting? And that microlearning should be designed around that one portion? Or is she more saying just if it's in a process, carte blanche, it's not microlearning?
I think what she's saying is that, and again, I think the nature of the content has to be such that you can do it in less than a minute. So let's say, how to scramble an egg. So well, no, not less than a minute. I guess. Wow, Jesus, that was the cardinal rule. I shouldn't have broke right there. But let's just say how to scramble an egg. Yes. So you could probably find a video out there that teaches you how to scramble an egg. What's that?
It's on TikTok.
It's on TikTok. You can probably find a TikTok video on how to scramble an egg. So that would be something that's simple enough content that allows itself to fit her definition of microlearning. So compliance training definitely is not. So now we have this TD.org article saying compliance training can certainly be done through not. So now we have this TD.org article saying compliance training can certainly be done through microlearning, which seems to be at odds with what she's saying. But, everybody can have their own opinion, which is the beauty of this world that we live in.
Well, but I think I think there's ways to do it. It just needs to be designed that way. There's a company that actually Cynthia and I kind of interviewed. They're a really cool company, and they're doing compliance training. I think we mentioned them before, but they're doing compliance training that's actually fun, where you would want to go learn it. And they're doing videos within the within the compliance training. The
videos are fun.
The videos are fun.
The actual instructor-led training is normal
because their videos weren't signed off on yet. So their videos are like they're trying to turn the compliance training on its head, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's great because they're trying to make it more engaging. Our world, equal credit opportunity, right? So they're showing this actual scenarios. Is that micro-learning,
or is that in addition to what we just trained you? And now let's give an example of the skit, and then let's talk about it.
It was not. I was just more going for that it's compliance training and looking at compliance training differently. It wasn't necessarily micro-learning.
So let me throw this out there, because this was kind of what I took my big takeaway from the article, is that people still don't know how to use micro-learning and say where to put it. I think here's my uninformed opinion on this. It's not the solution, it's a solution. So what happens if something's so damned important that we definitely can't be sued for this, and we want to support people after the fact? Why wouldn't we so we have them do a 20-minute e-learning module about regulation XYZ.
And then bump it.
And then bump it with little micro-learning bits over the next week and say, hey, don't forget about this part where this thing happened. Remember that thing? And then maybe you can even build that. Maybe there's a story that you deliver something over the next few days,
Right. So it could be part of an overall blended learning solution, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I think so. It could probably overcome what we found with the statistic. Anywhere from 60 to 99% of all learning is lost within the next 30 days.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, so there's a thing in the next article. There's a quote in the next article that's very much like that. Oh. And the next article is called "Training New Employees Sucks. 3 Ways to Make It Faster, Easier, and More Effective." Now, this is written by Jason Forrest, and this is the article that I said, wait a second. Because I saw the headline, and I thought, well, what's wrong with training new employees? You know what I mean? Like, what's wrong with that? And I read the article. So training, no doubt, and was about 3 specific things that make it faster and easier. But I couldn't for the life of me. So I did a Control F search on the page to try to find the word new. And so this article comes from, what do you guys know this already, don't you? Where is it from?
Entrepreneur.com.
Entrepreneur.com. And this is, so I did a Control F, and there's 4 instances. Oh, now there's 9. Must be some new ads on there. But they're all from ads. None of the things that say new are within the article. So I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with training new employees? So my guess is that an editor saw this and just threw a frickin' headline on it that they didn't care about. Anyways, the reason and the segue I was trying to find from the previous article was, Adam, you had just said that between 60 and 99% is lost in some period of time. And the quote in here is... Adam, you had just said that between 60 and 99% is lost in some period of time. And the quote in here is... Here we go. No, it's part of a longer one, too. Brace yourself for a non-German voice. LinkedIn's 2017 Workplace Learning Report discovered that only 8% of CEOs see an ROI for learning and development, yet more than 90% of them feel... Oh, that's the wrong quote. Hang on.
Well, it was good. It was good.
Damn it.
90% of them feel that closing the skills gap by using training would be a game changer for the business. So basically,
yes, that's true.
In that quote, they're saying 8% feel there's an ROI, but 90% want it.
Yeah, that's right. 8% actually see an ROI. So this is. Hang, I got to land the plane on this specific thing that's bugging me, because I would be remiss. So it actually comes up in the next piece where they say, and I just saw a return on whatever investment you've got, which we know
if they applied what they learned.
That's right. That's right. Well, and so we know that we're not really measuring a lot of ROI based on the information that was read in this article. And it said, yes, only 8% of CEOs see an ROI for learning and development, which is, it's a pretty sad frickin' state, isn't it?
Well, my question is it 8% because every
I don't have an answer
company
for this.
is measuring that? Or is it 8% out of the companies that measured it? Make sense?
So the link was in the article. Wait a second. You're saying did only 8%? Wait, what was your question? What's happening?
So my question is, how many companies did they do this research with? Where only 8%. So how many companies really take it through to true ROI to really see if there's been an increase?
Right. Well, they reference the...
So how many companies really take it through to true ROI to really see if there's been an increase?
Right. Well, they reference the 2017 LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report. No, I think I know what you mean, and I'm sure the sample size would be... So it's LinkedIn Learning. So not a small organization, a pretty significant company.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't quickly find where their stats might be as far as how many people were involved in this, but let's assume several. Are we good with several? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Service 5D. I don't know. But probably a lot. So I mean, even if let's say it's 100. I mean, if 100 CEOs out there say they're only getting ROI stats from their L&D departments, that's not a good state. And I was talking with a coworker the other day that so many, it seems like, are this will lead us nicely in a couple of minutes into our training intake conversation about, so we have a trainer request. Now what? The idea that we have a lot of requests that are, okay, hey, we got to train on this new thing. All right. And that's pretty much it. Like, we have to train on this new thing. Here's how the process works. Okay, now let's do that. And this is not meant to be a complaint about subject matter experts, because this seems to be as much our responsibility to push back and say, well, what are you measuring that with? And do you remember this was a couple episodes ago? We were talking about Fortnite, and I was talking about how I feel like there's some secret sauce that's in there about how they know everything that players do at all times, like forever. They know everything.
They measure
everything. Big Brother.
Well, and not even on a Big Brother stance, but because Lord knows I've got enough tinfoil hats. But the thing is,
Big Brother.
Well, and not even on a Big Brother stance, but because Lord knows I've got enough tinfoil hats. But the idea that at least while playing the game, they know exactly where you are on the map. They know exactly how high you are off what is the ground on the map. They know where other people are in proximity to, like, they know everything. And there just doesn't seem to be that level. Well, we know there's not that level of measurement in today's workplace, in just regular workplace. So I think that's where it needs to start. And I don't that's almost too big of a problem to solve, you know?
I think it depends upon the organization.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Tell me more.
I mean, I think some organizations do measure a lot more. And then when the organization is in a place that is measuring more and more and has the numbers and analytics behind it, the training department is able to get more of an respect. But
why are you quoting traditional ROI? Is there an alternative, like one with a tongue piercer or something?
No. When I'm talking traditional ROI, I'm saying, okay, we took this training affected this number. Okay, so like a sales number. We went to training. You could pretty much tie it directly there. That's traditional ROI. It's easy to measure based on a business metric.
Why do you keep saying traditional? I don't understand this.
That's what I was getting to. I think there's parts of other things that are much harder to measure and almost impossible to measure of when you're investing in your employees. Do they stay longer? Do they not? That's a harder number to measure. I don't know a lot of times that you can really measure that, but if your employees are being trained and going to training, anecdotally, they're probably going to stay longer than employees that get no training or no development. If your training is good, and yes, there is a part for, Kirkpatrick 1 smile sheets, they feel better about their job. If they smile sheets, they feel better about their job. If they go to a training class, they're pumped up, they're excited. You may not be able to see it right there in the number, but there probably is some type of ROI there. There's some of those things. But
that's where, especially if it's new hires, and it's not easy everywhere. I mean, but in certain positions or departments, there's definitely ROI you can get for after training to say, because they got this training in 30 days, they should be able to do this, 60 this, 90 that. And so there's that kind of definite for new hires ROI. It's just whether or not you can partner with that business department and really sit down and create those numbers and that are, realistic.
Yeah, provided that the department has measurements on that.
Yeah, and I've done it in several departments because they state this is where they need to be. And we also had
that's a perfect scenario, right?
Yeah, and we had nesting areas where we also had very structured productivity and things of where they needed to be at certain times. And then we had gap training. Because
I don't know what you mean by nestings. I haven't heard that before.
So like bullpens. So they weren't exactly just thrown to the wolves to do their job. They went for 3 to 4 weeks, and they weren't put out onto the floor until they were actually meeting certain numbers.
Yeah. That's like that goldfish in the bag, right?
Yeah,
you throw it in the tank, let the water warm up a little bit, or let it come to the same temperature.
It took a while, and it took a strong partnership, and it took some revisions, but we definitely got it down to, where we could really measure and talk about with those bullpen managers and with our about, gaps we possibly had in training, because we noticed definite gaps in all of them. Or what kind of, within that bullpen during week 1, 2, 3, and 4, could we do up training on to help them reach those numbers, and what was their ROI? And then there's a couple times where if you do a strong needs analysis and you really have a great partnership, it's very, you can find the ROI when it comes to production and what you want to change.
Well, so that's it. So maybe it's a needs analysis thing then. And then maybe that's part of the questions that we ask the subject matter experts or the stakeholders about where they're coming from. And
And it all begins, it goes all the way back always to how strong a relationship have you built with that business partner where they trust you. How strong a relationship have you built with that business partner where they trust you enough to get to those conversations?
Well, I think the trust would certainly kind of lubricate the wheels a little bit, but there's no reason that someone that's new couldn't say, so what measurements do we have about this? Or how do we know there's a gap in actual training? I think it helps. It kind of, it propels it forward a lot more, but there's no reason that a new person can't ask those questions.
Well, absolutely not. But it's so much easier because they already understand where you're coming from. and why you're
Sure.
doing it, and they're more open to spending time with meetings for you because you have taught them and trained them about why training is important.
Well, let me ask you, how many is it reasonable, unreasonable for stakeholders that, like, I don't think the training department would be going to stakeholders a lot saying, hey, I'd like, sometimes that might happen, but
I have.
It's probably going to be, okay, great. If we were looking at the numbers, though, it's probably more people coming to the L&D department and saying, hey, I've got a problem that needs to be fixed. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. No? All right. Maybe it's not.
No. I even brought something today. I brought something up to a business partner.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and the
that's
funny
good.
thing was that business partner was like, I just had a conversation about this on yesterday.
Well, so you're in tune, and there's that relationship piece. You're in tune with the business, and that's important. No doubt that relationship piece is important. But I guess I'm wondering, and maybe we could talk more about it in the training intake pieces, are there certain questions that we can ask? Are there certain ways that we can approach a situation that make it a little bit easier to kind of not paint by numbers, but to follow the bouncing ball, as it were, to get the information, to build something, to solve a gap, to fix a gap, you know? Let's just quickly wrap up Jason Forrest's article from entrepreneur.com. And again, the title of this was Training New Employees Sucks. I'm not sure why it's titled that. But you can find this link at mosby.ca/022. There were three big things that he had suggested in this article to make sure that the training stays effective. One of them is belief-based training. And I think the punchline there was, it goes back to that whole people forget stuff because it's no longer important after training because they don't do things because they don't really believe in doing the thing. So he had encouraged making things kind of more belief-based. Now that sounds really complicated because unless you include a hymn book, it seems tricky. Any thoughts there on you guys from that one on the belief-based trainings?
I get it. I think it was. When I first saw it, I thought it was weird, but I mean, I get what he's saying when you read that part. Like, you know, you gotta. I mean, it's like, you know, we were talking today in one of our classes about, you know, and I used to do this in collections all the time, is you gotta show them how it's gonna bring them success in something they value, or it's going to help them give them what they want. And so that's when I started reading that part. That's more so where I turn to, is you got to change sometimes you got to, you know, help give them a paradigm shift. And, you know, and to help them see how this product or this training or whatever it is going to help them in their lives. So that's kind of how I saw it. It's not, but
Well,
it's
no,
like
I know that. Yeah.
it's going from that sense of you gotta help them see how it's going to help them be great.
Yep. No, that makes sense. It just seems tricky.
Yeah. And if you don't, then they're just not going to change. But you've got to instill that to change it in them.
Yeah. The other two things, I don't think they really either seem much easier. One is train your leaders, so you're kind of your middle managers, and the other one is craft your culture. Now, if you look at the middle managers, they should absolutely get maybe more intensive training or a little bit more detailed training than the frontline staff should get, so that they can not only coach when they need to or help you know, maintain the behavior changes, but to also be cheerleaders of sorts. But it shouldn't just end with the middle managers. It should go all the way up the food chain, and that's kind of that craft your culture piece too. So craft your culture, I mean, like, how your culture piece too. So craft your culture, I mean, like, how that seems very difficult to address in training. You would, of course, have culture as part of that training because it's within the company that it's within. You know, you're going to have the things in forests have leaves. It's pretty easy to make that connection. But the idea of crafting your culture sounds like a bigger effort that's going to require a lot of those relationships that you mentioned a few minutes ago, Gibbs, that you need to lean on people and you need to talk to people. And there's a lot of, if I could use a buzzword, socialization that needs to happen there. And you got to rely on a lot of people for something like that. I don't know. That's it. I want to move on, though, unless you guys have anything else you want to say there.
So Adam's really quiet, but
Yeah, Adam, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I was just thinking of this when you're talking about culture, and the reason I was thinking about today is because we've launched a new training class, and it's our second time doing it, and it was really interesting because one of the things we've added is our human resources person, and these last two times it's actually been our CHRO come in, and the whole topic is about building the company's culture. And they love it. These new employees are loving it, and I think it's just and we are as a company still building our culture. And he was talking about wanting to give the company a personality. He doesn't like the word culture, but wanting to give the company a personality, and saying how we're building our culture here and we're building our personality, and they eat it up. Like he is one of their most favorite topics that we've had, and we have several guest speakers. And so I saw when I was reading this, it made me totally think of that, of how we're building that culture and that personality in them within their first week and a half at the job. And it's it's really awesome. Like, it's really exciting, and and how he's bringing that about, and he's and they just love it. It's and when we debrief every time, it's only been 2 times, but when we end the day and ask them what's their biggest aha, and they talk about, I'm so excited about the personality or the culture this company's working to build.
That's awesome. Well, you've got, and that's a great example, because that shows. So there's also this culture piece that I want to share with you, and you also brought up kind of the idea of a personality. That's really cool. I poked at that with like brand personas before, and I think that's a really neat idea, because it really helps people very quickly say like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. I know what that is now. I get it. Cool. So that's really interesting. Adam, anything to add there?
No. So no, I think Gibbs hit it on the head.
All right.
He's like reading a different article or something.
He's a busy guy. He's
like
all right,
multitasking.
You know what? Let's move on. We were going to do that Can Training Fix It, which it really, there was a sad state of affairs where a guy he somehow found himself into the ceiling tiles of a roof, I think, and it's just I don't know what the deal was, but you can find the article on Florida Man, which is an incredible website about the world's worst. So check that out on your own time. So let's just jump into the big thing then, which is the concept, the conversations around training intake. So somebody knocks on your door and they say, "Hey, we've got some ideas about training, and we need this gap solved." And then you got to say, okay, cool. And you have to roll with that, and you have to come up with something. So, well, I'm not going to ask you, I guess, to tip your cards. There was a couple of things that I'll include in the show notes, because I was looking at this the other day, and one of them was a article from trainingindustry.com, and the other one was from Cathy Moore, who is the name I'm sure you're familiar with. She's certainly somebody in the industry, and it was from her website. So this thing the other day, let me pull up this, because I had it, and then I had it, and then I lost it. What is it? Website. So this thing the other day, let me pull up this, because I had it, and then I had it, and then I lost it. What is it? So this is a template. There was actually a template, a training request form template that was on trainingindustry.com. And I'm just going to kind of go through some of the things that are on here and just, okay, do they make sense? Yeah, okay, let's move on. Or what's missing from this list maybe. So on a high level, what do we have here? Obviously, who's asking for the training, what the training topic might be. Now, I find it interesting that in a training request form, one of the categories is training topic / name. So I guess if it was a system, you might say system blank, procedure X or something like that. I don't know. But I find it's almost as dangerous to call it a document a final version of a document, because as soon as you label it final, like 20 minutes later, somebody emails in with this last minute, I just got one more thing I need to fix. Dangerous to me. The business goal and benefit, that seems to feel all right. What else do we have here? Strategic alignment. How does it align with company objectives? Is that something you guys consider on the regular?
Yeah. So I think, this training request form, it's a form, I think a lot of times these things come down from, a training group and says, hey, the business needs to fill this out. And I think that's where it kind of falls apart. These are questions that anybody who's consulting with the business should be able to fill out. It's like some companies go down and say, hey, you got to do this intake request form. And so you put it to the business. But I think if you use this as a guideline to say, hey, here's the questions you should be asking for your business when you're consulting with them, I think it works out really, really well. And I would ask any of the, training liaisons, hey, can you answer all these questions on the project? And so strategic alignment, absolutely, right? So I think that's into currently is there's requests coming off from all over the place. You hit them in the hallway, you're kind of hitting them. That's where I love getting training requests too, when you're going from class to class. Hey, we need training on this. Oh, do you? But it kind of goes back to, where does the prioritization go and whose priority actually is it, right? And so understanding whose priority and then where it is in the kind of the top 10 or top 20 goals of the overall organization. And so I think it's a very fair question. Where does it align with that objective?
What about what data or metrics do you wish to improve? That's something that
that's where you got to ask it, right?
It is, because that's usually, it's funny that it's people that even might be very number heavy and detail centric, that they wouldn't bring you a stat like, hey, listen, this is the needle you need to move.
Right.
That seems like it would be the first.
That's an important question to answer. Right.
Well, it's always an important question to answer, regardless.
It could be, though, it matches with the company objective, but training may not be the solution, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Absolutely.
It's hey, I'm doing this because of this big initiative for 2022 or 2020, but I have no way to measure it. I have no anything, and we just wanted them to know. Like, it's a knowledge transfer of, I just want the people to know this. Well, it's not training. Because there was no objective.
But the answer to that data metric question can tell you it's not training.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we're saying the same thing. I love it. What else is on here? I don't know. Communication plan. That's interesting. That's something that we did talk about. And we've all talked about this in the past, that it's not enough to just make the training. You got to kind of warn people about it. You got to invite them to it, or you got to, encourage them to take it. And then you got to tell them about it afterwards a little bit too, to make sure that those most we did talk about. And we've all talked about this in the past, that it's not enough to just make the training. You got to kind of warn people about it. You got to invite them to it, or you got to, encourage them to take it. And then you got to tell them about it afterwards a little bit too, to make sure that those most important points get hit home. So
can I say something about that, though, too?
I think that'd be all right.
I don't think it's just a communication plan of, hey, we're bringing out training. I think with your business partner and with your SMEs, there needs to be a very strong communication plan of their roles and responsibilities and dates during the actual development and design.
So you need specific, are you saying specific dates? Because what I find is that during development, because of maybe other conflicting projects or priorities and the content itself, sometimes dates that are set early are never actually realized.
Well, and I'm not necessarily talking like deadline dates or except this date. So I'm not saying the dates have to be super specific, but a communication plan has to go with your business partner and with this SMEs throughout that whole design and development process. And then there needs a strong communication plan for the whole implementation of it. So I think, I almost think 19 is too far down.
Well, I don't know if it's ranked. I think they're just listed.
Yeah, but
the excuse me, I guess I'm still recovering from my voice situation from last week here. It's funny because the things that come up in this template, they all seem to make sense, and that's when I clicked the few options lower on the page of my Google search results, and it was this Cathy Moore article, and the header is "Burn Your Training Request Form," and I thought, burn your training request form. And I thought, I just got really comfortable with the idea of this form. And what she's saying is that it almost puts the wrong mentality, or it positions it the wrong way to the client, so that you're kind of putting yourself into a corner when it's about training. So her big thing is not training in quotes, but development. If you have to have a form, call it something like a development request to make clear your job is to improve performance, not create training on demand. And that's interesting, Adam. I think you've talked about before about kind of what performance specifically was, I think, the phrase you had used, but this idea of it's not the asset shouldn't be the thing that we're focused on. And really, a lot of the times it is the thing that we're focused on. We should be focused on moving the needle, on changing the behavior, the performance.
Right. It's what is the performance goal? Marketings, and I've seen it with policy and procedure departments. I've seen it with anything that takes an intake of service departments, right? Like at the telephone side, hey, we need to open tickets. Anytime you put that type of formality and say, hey, you need to fill out this form, you lose that conversation of what do you really want to accomplish, and you lose the consulting edge with it. And ultimately, because you create such a formality, I think you don't get the true performance out of it.
And that's a good point, because when you're saying that, it just becomes a task.
Right. And then some of the business won't even do it, or do it ineffectively. And then you're relying on it versus having the conversation, really understanding, because all of those questions in that form probably could use a follow-up. And so what is the goal that you're looking to meet? What is it currently that you're at? How long have you been there? What is the goal that you're looking to meet? What is it currently that you're at? How long have you been there? Why do you want to change it? How does that hit? They should keep going. That's the start of that conversation, but it should keep going deeper and deeper. There's a couple of things that I think we're missing there, and it might have been on there. There's 20 of them. I might have missed it, but who are some people that are doing it right now? If that is part of that training request form, right? And what does that by that you
mean
like?
Who's doing it correctly currently?
Correct. If it's a change type training like that, where some people are doing it right, some people are not. Sometimes it's not right. Sometimes it's a new process all the way across.
And the other question too is not only who's doing it right or who's doing it wrong, but who in the heck has time for all of that with how fast we move?
Yeah, I mean, I think that depends upon the organization. But if you're asking all these questions up front, you have a better chance of succeeding and actually moving the needle, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head here a little bit ago, Cynthia. It kind of comes down to the overall needs analysis, right? The more questions that you ask, the deeper of a needs analysis you do, generally you're going to have a better outcome because you did the digging up front. And far too often we don't. So an intake process is good, and it's good to have consistency, but I think that entire skill is often overlooked. And then training departments as a whole and just trainers are looking to please without slowing it down there and then rush through the rest of the project. If you slow it down just a little bit here, the project is more likely to succeed. You're going to have better adoption, and you're going to be able to move that needle.
And the less scope creep if you do a strong needs analysis.
Scope creep always seems to happen.
I guess you're gonna creep in advance because you're gonna initially encompass everything that it should eventually encompass anyways.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there won't be some changes, etc., but the scope creep is isn't as crazy. In the end, it's still pretty much solid.
Yeah, because you spent enough time asking about the problem to begin with. Yeah.
And again, it comes back to that relationship and that partnership where you do feel like there's being some major scope creep. When you have that relationship, you can say, let's go back to what the scope truly was. Yeah. And are we saying it's changed?
Well, and I think ultimately it's a partnership, but it also depends upon the organization, right? So some training organizations are not expected to actually consult with their clients. They are run as a service, here's a shared service, and or even training departments that are, let's say, a contracting company, they don't get to consult. They basically do. Right. And so it's like, hey, we have this project. Here's what we want. Okay. And you just go and execute. So not everybody has that ability, though, to build a partnership like that. And it just really depends upon the organization, because I think some people do not have that ability. So certain companies will rely on this. And that's what the training organization builds off of. First, being able to actually consult. I think we've been blessed in some of the companies we're at that we're able to have the business partners where, not all the time, sometimes you just got to train, but we have the ability to build those relationships and actually impact their business as training consultants and performance improvement.
All right. Thank you both very much for kind of talking through that a little bit. We'll make sure that both of these articles that are in our section are with the other ones we talked about today at mosby.ca/022, where you can find the show notes for this. If you want to send this email, we're not done. I got a message from Portland here that I've got to open up. Check that out. If you want to send this email, though, mosbylearning@gmail.com is where you can send that. Maybe you've got a really, really good intake process, or maybe you ask those probing questions really, really well. I'd love to hear those. We'd all love to hear those. Maybe share them with the greater good here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I've got this, the last thing for today, I've got this note from Portland, so...
You done messed up, Aaron!
All right, and I've been regretting, or not regretting, not looking forward to reading this since the last episode, because we were like on thin ice. You know what I mean? It was dicey, and I don't even know if we're out of the woods yet. So here we go. Hello, Dan. If we're out of the woods yet. So here we go. Hello, Daniel. So that's pretty formal. My name is Rowan, and I am new to the corrections, or I am the new corrections officer assigned to your podcast. Interesting. And just for ladies and gentlemen, there's some folks out there that aren't really familiar with who Portland is. They're just the regulatory body here. They keep an eye, making sure that podcasters just don't overstep bounds that they should. So I apologize for the sudden change. Yeah, he's the new corrections officer. I apologize for the sudden change, as we usually like to transition gradually between corrections officers. I know you have come to expect a minimum 2-episode warning. There will be a change, and I feel I owe you some transparency. It seems your previous correction officer, Braden, suddenly took ill Monday evening while at work. Oh, jeez. While listening to Monday evening releases and needed to be removed from the premises. Good Lord. I haven't been officially updated as to his status, but as it's been hinted at to me, he may have been at least temporarily institutionalized, and you and I may need to get used to working together for at least a foreseeable future. Wow. Due to the chaos in the office, I've not been able to officially review episode 21. I may not get to it in time for your next recording. I'll be sure to review episode 22 in a timely fashion. Look forward to working with you, Rowan. Wow. Okay. Well, hey, that might be a good thing, because bad news for Braden, but if they don't catch wind of episode 21, that probably works out to everybody's benefit.
It's probably good. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Adam, where can folks find out about you if they want to learn about the incredibly witty things that you put out there into the world socially? Where would they find those?
Sure, it's just Adam Costakes, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Adam Costakes on LinkedIn, and that's C. Gibbs, how about yourself?
Same place.
Same
LinkedIn.
place, and that's Costakes.
Yes.
Very good. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. You can find me on Instagram, Dan Talks Training, and it kind of looks like it says Dan Talks Straining. I don't know what that would mean.
This could be true with some of those slow-mo pictures of yourself.
It gets. What does that even mean?
It's frightening sometimes where you stop them.
I don't even know what you're talking about. This is another shot at me about the picture that I put out on LinkedIn. Unbelievable. You're rude, Gibbs. On Twitter, you can find me
people
at
nightmares.
Dan Talks LND. Gosh, none taken. Don't worry. So Dan Talks LND on Twitter, and also you can find we put the show notes, or the show taken. Don't worry. So Dan Talks LND on Twitter, and also you can find we put the show notes, or the show in its entirety on YouTube. And if there's a small segment that we want to pull out of there, we do that too. So you can find those. I think my YouTube handle is Daniel Hirt, so maybe that's where Rowan got my name from. DANIELHIRT. And we also have a Mosby Learning Twitter handle. Adam, what's that one?
Mosby Learning.
I love it.
There it is. Nice and easy. It's not like 6 different things like your handles.
Okay, I see. I see
How
how
can
it
you
is.
make it more confusing? Should just be like Dan Talks LND on every channel.
Yes.
You know what I need to do? I need to actually put a social media page on mosby.ca so that I can just say, go here, and they can get everything they want.
And wasn't it when we started, you only wanted to be in one place?
Oh, don't mistake me. I don't want to be in any of.
We started, you only wanted to be in one place.
Oh, don't mistake me. I don't want to be in any other places. I'm not sure I want to be on LinkedIn, but for the sake of the program, I went where the people are, Cynthia, because that's what I need to do. You got to go where people are, otherwise they don't know you're there.
All 11 of them?
That's right. Now they know.
Okay. All right.
So problem solved. Actually, doesn't matter how many. Size doesn't matter, folks. All right, that's it for us. Thank you very much. We will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Analysis, right? The more that you ask, the deeper of a need analysis you do, generally you're going to have a better